If you're the kind of person who says yes and then spends the whole night regretting it, listen to this. You don't have to keep giving away your time just to avoid feeling selfish. If you don't fix this, you'll keep giving away your nights, your energy, and your self-respect. Today I'll show you how to say no without feeling like a bad person. We'll plug it into a real Friday night invite where you usually cave and regret it the next morning. If that sounds like something you need, stay with me. Your phone buzzes on the coffee table while you're finally sitting down after a long day. You see your friend's name pop up with a long text. Hey, can you help me move this weekend? I know it's last minute, but you're the only one I trust. Your stomach drops, your shoulders tense, and even before you finish reading, you already feel the familiar pressure to say yes, again. Here's the problem, you don't actually want to help this weekend. You're exhausted, you've got your own life to manage, and honestly, they could have planned better. But in your head, one thought keeps looping, if I say no, I'm a bad friend. So you start rehearsing excuses, feeling guilty, stressed, and resentful all at once, even before you've replied. This isn't just about one favor. It's the way you say yes to extra shifts at work even when you're burned out, because you don't want to look lazy. It's how you agree to late-night calls from a partner who's upset even when you need sleep for an early morning, because you don't want to look cold. It's how you lend money you can't afford to lend, because you don't want to look selfish. The cost isn't just your time. It's your energy, your sleep, your focus, and your sense that your life belongs to you and not to everyone who asks for a piece of it. Today we're going to challenge one of the biggest lies you've been carrying, that saying no makes you a bad person. It doesn't. In fact, the people who can say a clean, honest no tend to show up more fully when they say yes. When you stop handing out your time and energy on autopilot, you stop building up quiet resentment, and you start living in a way that actually matches your values. By the time we're done, you're going to have simple lines you can actually say when someone asks for something you don't want to give. You'll be able to pause before you answer instead of blurting yes and regretting it. You'll have a few rules that protect your time so your default response isn't just sure, I can do that, while your chest feels tight and your calendar fills up with things you didn't really choose. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. First, we're going to tear apart the belief that saying no is the same thing as being unkind and show you what healthy boundaries actually are. Next, we'll look at why your brain rushes to feel guilty, and how to slow that reaction down so you respond with intention instead of panic. Then we'll build some real-life lines you can send by text or say out loud when someone pushes you. After that, we'll walk through what to do when people don't like your boundaries and how to stay calm through their reactions. Finally, we'll plug all of this into one Friday night story where you're invited out, you're exhausted, and you actually handle it differently. In a bit, we'll walk through that exact weekend moment. Your friend wants you to go out or show up for them again, your body wants to default to yes, and you'll see the sentence that lets you say no without starting a fight or drowning in guilt. Keep listening, because that moment is where everything we talk about today comes together. Here's the first shift. Boundaries are not about punishing other people, they're about protecting what matters to you. When you've grown up or lived for years believing that a good person is always available, always helpful, and always reachable, saying no feels like breaking some moral rule. But the truth is, every yes you give out of guilt is a no to something else you cared about: rest, family, your health, your work, your peace of mind. If you never change this pattern, you don't just get busy, you quietly lose respect for yourself because your own needs never seem to count. Why does this matter so much? Because your brain has learned that harmony equals safety. If no one is upset with you, you feel okay. So anytime someone asks for something, your nervous system rushes to avoid conflict. You say yes to dodge the discomfort of disappointment or anger from others. From a Stoic perspective, as Marcus would put it, your job is to govern your own choices, not other people's emotions. When you mix those up, you end up responsible for everything and free in nothing. When you start seeing boundaries as caring for your own capacity, not attacking anyone else, your decisions start to feel cleaner, not selfish. So here's one simple line to start with: I'm not able to do that, but I hope it goes well. That's it. No big explanation, no apology paragraph, no list of reasons hoping the other person will give you a permission slip. Just a clear statement of what you can't do, and a small goodwill wish to show you're not attacking them as a person. You can soften it slightly if you want: this week's really full for me, so I'm not able to do that, but I hope it goes well. But the core remains: you're not available, and you're not rude. Picture this on a regular Tuesday in Toronto or Chicago. Your coworker messages you on Slack: "Hey, could you take a look at this deck for me tonight? I know it's last minute, but I'm slammed and my presentation is tomorrow." Old you feels the familiar panic. You already promised yourself you'd actually log off at a reasonable time for once. Your calendar is already packed. But your fingers are halfway to typing, "Sure, send it over," before you even think. This time you pause. You remember, your job is to protect your own capacity, not to rescue everyone from their poor planning. You type, "Hey, I'm not able to do that tonight, but I really hope it goes well tomorrow." You sit there staring at the message, feeling that wave of guilt rise. Am I being a bad teammate? But you send it anyway. Maybe they reply no worries, or maybe they don't reply at all. Either way, you get to shut your laptop when you said you would. You get to have your evening back instead of living in a quiet, tired resentment. Your tiny action today is simple. Think of one small request you've been saying yes to on autopilot. Maybe it's reviewing things after hours. Maybe it's driving someone across town. Maybe it's always picking up the phone late at night. The next time it comes up, you use that exact line: "I'm not able to do that, but I hope it goes well." One time. One situation. Not your whole life at once. Right now, take a slow breath with me. In, hold, and out. Notice what happens in your chest when you imagine actually sending that message. Maybe it tightens. Maybe your thoughts speed up with stories about being selfish. Just notice that. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just learning what it feels like to start protecting your own energy. Hold on to this line, because when we get to that Friday night situation later, it's going to be the sentence that quietly changes the direction of your whole weekend. Let's go a level deeper and talk about guilt, because that's usually the real problem. The words are simple. Saying, "I won't be able to make it," isn't that hard to memorize. What makes it hard to use is the storm that hits inside you after you say it. You feel like you've let someone down, that they're disappointed or annoyed, and your brain tells you that feeling means you must have done something wrong. If you keep believing that, you'll always end up caving and sending the "actually, okay, I can do it" follow-up text just to make the guilt go away. What's actually happening is this: your nervous system is used to measuring your goodness by how other people react. If they're smiling, laughing, or grateful, you feel like a good person. If they're quiet, distant, or upset, you feel like a bad one. So every no risk that moment where they're not happy with you. From a Stoic angle, that's handing them your judgment. You're letting their mood decide whether you're good or bad. When you do that, you can't hold a boundary, because any negative reaction feels like a verdict on your character. Here's the shift: feeling guilty doesn't automatically mean you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt is just the sensation of breaking an old pattern that never really served you. Think about a time you started going to the gym or waking up earlier. At first it felt uncomfortable, maybe even wrong, simply because it was new. Your body complained. Your mind tried to bargain. But the discomfort wasn't a sign you were harming yourself, it was a sign that something was changing. So here's your microscript for this: it's okay to feel guilty and still say no. That's a sentence you say to yourself, not to the other person. You can add, "I'm allowed to protect my time," but the core is that first line. You're not waiting for guilt to disappear before you act. You're allowing guilt to ride in the back seat while you drive the car. Imagine this in a real-life scene. You live in a small apartment in Boston or Seattle. Your roommate knocks on your bedroom door at 11 at night on a workday. "Hey, can we talk about something? I really need to vent. I'm so frustrated about my day. Old you would immediately say yes, even though you have an early meeting and you're already exhausted. You'd sit on the couch for an hour, trying to be supportive while your eyes hurt and your brain is screaming for sleep. Then you'd lie in bed annoyed at them and ashamed of yourself for not sticking to your needs. This time, you take a small breath before answering. You remember your script. You say, I care about you, and I want to hear about this, but I need to get up early. Can we talk tomorrow after work instead? You can feel the guilt starting to rise like heat in your chest. Maybe they look disappointed or say, okay, I guess, in that tone that tells you they're not thrilled. As you close your door, your brain starts yelling, see? You're a bad friend. They needed you. That's your moment. You sit on the edge of your bed, put your feet on the floor, and say quietly to yourself, it's okay to feel guilty and still say no. I'm allowed to protect my time. You repeat it once more, slower this time. In that moment, you're teaching your body a new lesson. Other people can feel how they feel, and you can still honor what you need. Over time, that sentence becomes a bridge between your values and your behavior. Your tiny action today, write that line somewhere you'll see it, on a sticky note, inside your Notes app, on your lock screen. It's okay to feel guilty and still say no. The next time you set a boundary and the guilt wave hits, don't try to argue with it or drown in it. Just notice it and repeat that sentence quietly, like you're talking to a younger version of yourself who's just learning that it's safe to take up space. Let's take another slow moment here. Close your eyes for a second if you can. Think of one specific person in your life where saying no feels almost impossible. See their faces. Remember a recent situation where you said yes even though everything in you wanted to say no. Feel how that was in your body. Now imagine the same scene happening again, but this time you say, I care about you, and I want to hear about this, but I need to get up early. Can we talk tomorrow instead? Pay attention to the discomfort, but also to the small spark of self-respect in there. That's what we're building. Now let's talk about speed. Most boundary problems don't start because you don't know what you want, they start because you answer too fast. Someone asks, can you? And your mouth or your thumbs say yes before your mind has even checked in with your calendar, your energy, or your priorities. It's like your default setting is agree now, panic later. If you never change this, your life stays overbooked, and your best time gets traded away for things that weren't that important to you in the first place. One of the most powerful tools you can use is simply buying time. Not weeks, not months, just hours. When you give yourself a buffer between the request and your answer, you move from reacting to responding. Reacting comes from fear and habit. Responding comes from values. The Stoic move here is to create a gap where you can actually think, does this fit with what I've decided matters to me right now? So here's a microscript you can start using today. Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow. That's it. It doesn't commit you. It doesn't promise anything. It gives you space to check your schedule, your energy, and honestly, your desire. You're allowed to consider whether you actually want to do something before you agree to it. Picture this in a very normal North American situation. You're at work in a mid-sized company in Denver. Your manager pulls you aside after a meeting. Hey, there's this new project that's coming up. It would be great visibility for you, but it'll probably mean some extra hours in the evenings for the next month. Can you take it on? Old you would feel a rush of adrenaline and pressure. You'd think about how saying no might look like you're not a team player. Before your brain can catch up, you'd hear yourself say, yeah, sure, I can do that, and then spend the next 4 weeks trying not to drown. This time, you remember your script. You say, thanks for thinking of me. Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow. Your manager might look a little surprised. They're used to people giving immediate answers. But most reasonable people will accept that. Now, instead of making a fear-based decision in front of them, you have the evening to sit down with your calendar, talk to your partner if you have one, and check in with yourself. Maybe you realize, this actually isn't the right time for me, and you decide to decline. Or maybe you realize you can do it if you adjust some other commitments. Either way, your answer is intentional, not automatic. Your tiny action: for the next week, make this your new default whenever someone asks you for something that will cost more than 15 minutes of your time. Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow. You don't need to use it with every small thing, like choosing where to eat, but with anything that touches your time, money, or energy in a real way, you insert that pause. Right now, take a breath and imagine one situation coming up in the next few days where someone might ask you for a favor, a ride, support, coverage, money, or your time. See the moment. Maybe it's a text from your cousin, maybe it's your boss, and maybe it's a friend asking you to help them move. Hear the request. Feel your usual urge to say yes instantly. Now, in your mind, hear yourself say, "Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow." Say it out loud once if you can. Again, a little slower, so your mouth gets used to the rhythm. You're not being evasive. You're practicing self-respect. You're giving yourself room to check if this yes fits your current season, your responsibilities, and your capacity. Later, when we get to that Friday night story, this line will be the first thing that keeps you from sleepwalking into another weekend you didn't really choose. We've talked about protecting your time and slowing down, but there's another layer that makes boundaries hard: the fear that a no will blow up into drama. Maybe you grew up in a house where any disagreement turned into shouting or silent treatment. Maybe you've had partners or friends who made you feel guilty, sulked, or threatened to leave whenever you didn't do what they wanted. If that's your background, of course your body braces when you think about saying no. It's not just, "they might be disappointed." It's, "this might explode." If you don't shift this, your life becomes a careful performance. You say yes to avoid the fallout. You over-explain every no, trying to manage everyone's reactions and preempt their disappointment. That's exhausting. It also teaches people that if they pressure you enough, you'll eventually cave. The more you do it, the less they respect your words, and the more you resent them. The key here is learning to stay calm in the face of other people's discomfort. You can't control whether someone feels annoyed or let down. You can control how clear and steady you are. From a Stoic point of view, this is where you distinguish between what's up to you and what isn't. Your tone, your words, your follow-through, that's yours. Their mood, their stories about you, that's theirs. Here's a practical line for when someone pushes back: "I get that you're disappointed, but my answer's the same." You can lead in with a bit of empathy, like, "I know you were really counting on me, and I get that you're disappointed, but my answer's the same." The structure matters. You're acknowledging their feelings without letting those feelings steer your choice. Let's drop into a real-life example. You live in a suburb outside Atlanta. Your sibling texts you, "Hey, can I borrow $400 to cover rent? I'll pay you back next month." You know their pattern. This has happened many times, and next month usually turns into sometime. You check your own account and realize that $400 is going to put you in a tight spot. Old you would start spiraling. "If I say no, they'll think I don't care. They'll tell mom. The whole family will talk." This time, you pause and think about your own financial boundaries. You decide you're not comfortable lending that amount. You reply, "I'm not able to lend money right now." They come back with, "Seriously? You know I'm struggling." "Wow, okay." You feel your chest tighten, your jaw clench. The urge to fix it by sending the money anyway is strong. You remember your line. You take a breath, feel your feet on the floor, and type, "I get that you're disappointed, and I know this is stressful. My answer's the same." Then you put your phone down. Maybe they send a few more guilt-tinged messages. Maybe they complain to someone else. You'll feel the discomfort, that's real. But you're also building a new pattern. Their reaction doesn't automatically cancel your boundary. Your tiny action: think of one area where people in your life tend to push you: money, time, emotional labor, rides, favors. Decide ahead of time what your boundary is for the next 3 months. It might be, "I don't lend more than $100, or "I don't do work calls after 7 p.m., or "I don't respond to angry texts immediately." Then write out your version of, "I get that you're disappointed, but my answer's the same, so it's ready. Let's practice the calm in your body for a moment. Sit comfortably if you can. Breathe in through your nose, slow and steady, for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 2. Breathe out through your mouth for a count of 6. As you exhale, imagine yourself standing in a room where someone is upset with you, but you're grounded. Feel the floor under your feet, your shoulders lowered, your jaw unclenched. Picture yourself saying, "I get that you're disappointed, but my answer's the same," in a calm tone. Not defensive, not aggressive. Just steady. That's what we're aiming for when someone pushes on your no. Boundaries don't only live in big dramatic moments, they live in tiny daily patterns, especially on your phone. A lot of your guilt doesn't come from one huge task. It comes from the constant stream of messages you feel you have to respond to right away. Group chats, DMs, emails, voice notes, you feel like you're always on call. If you don't answer within minutes, you start worrying people will think you're ignoring them or that you don't care. If you never change this, your focus stays shattered and you never truly rest, even when you're technically off. One powerful place to set boundaries is around response time. You're allowed to have a personal rule that you don't respond instantly to non-urgent messages. You're allowed to let texts sit while you finish work, relax, or just breathe. When you do this, you're moving from living in everyone else's timeline to living on your own. Here's a microscript for this. Hey, I don't always reply right away, but I'll get back to you when I can. You don't owe this line to every single person, but it can be helpful with people who expect instant responses or who get anxious when you don't reply quickly. It sets an expectation. Your silence isn't rejection, it's just life. Imagine you're in New York or Vancouver, working remotely from home. Your friend group has a busy group chat that pops off all day long, memes, complaints about work, weekend plans, random videos. Your phone buzzes nonstop. You keep your notifications on loud, feel obligated to read everything as it comes in, and reply to most of it because you don't want to seem distant. By the end of the day, your brain feels like it's been pecked at from 100 angles. You decide to change the pattern. First, you mute the group chat for 8 hours. Then you send one message, "Hey, just a heads up, I don't always reply right away during the day, but I'll get back to you when I can." That's it. You don't need to write a big apology or explain your schedule in detail. You've set a simple expectation. Your availability is not constant. Your tiny action today: pick one thread, one group chat, one DM conversation, one email thread that drains you. Mute it for 24 hours. If it's appropriate, send a quick message like, "Hey, I don't always reply right away, but I'll get back to you when I can." Then leave it. Notice how often you reach for your phone out of habit and catch yourself. Take a slow practice moment here. Put your phone face down beside you. Let your hands rest in your lap. Breathe in and imagine a quiet evening where you're not jumping at every notification. Imagine yourself deciding when to check messages instead of being dragged by them. Feel what that would be like for your body and your mind. You might feel a bit of anxiety at the idea that someone might be waiting on you. Let that be there, and at the same time notice the space that opens up when you're not glued to your screen. This kind of boundary doesn't always look dramatic from the outside, but it shifts the whole feel of your days. Later, when we walk through that Friday night invite, this "I don't reply right away" rule will be part of how you protect your rest instead of getting pulled out the door by every buzzing notification. Now let's bring this into work in a more direct way. Work culture in a lot of North American offices quietly rewards people who never say no. The person who always stays late, who always takes one more task, who never pushes back, on the surface, they look like the ideal employee. Inside, though, they're usually stressed, burned out, and silently angry. If you never draw lines here, you can end up resenting a job you once liked, not because the work itself is terrible, but because you never protected your limits. A key idea: you're allowed to have boundaries at work without being rude or unprofessional. You can be reliable, hardworking, and still have lines you don't cross. In fact, people who know their limits and communicate clearly often get more respect in the long run, because their eyes actually mean something. Here's a line you can use when someone tries to add more to your plate than you can carry. I can do that, but I'll need to move something else. What should I deprioritize? This shifts the conversation. Instead of you silently absorbing more and more tasks, it invites your manager or coworker to share responsibility for the trade-offs. Picture a scene in a mid-level office in Dallas or Detroit. It's Thursday afternoon, and you're already juggling a big report due Monday and a presentation you're tweaking for Wednesday. Your manager swings by your desk or pings you on Teams. We've got a client asking for a quick turnaround on this proposal. Can you pull it together by Monday too? You would immediately say, sure, I'll figure it out, and then spend your weekend glued to your laptop, feeling trapped. This time, you pause. You remember your line. You say, I can do that, but I'll need to move something else. What should I deprioritize? Maybe your manager says, well, everything's important, but often, they'll realize they can't just pile everything on you. They might decide to push the report deadline, give part of the work to someone else, or decide the proposal isn't actually that urgent. The point isn't to dodge work, it's to avoid the quiet, endless creep of tasks that slowly pushes you to the brink. Your tiny action: the next time someone at work asks you to take on something significant when you're already full, use some version of that line. Even if it feels awkward. Even if your voice shakes a little. I can do that, but I'll need to move something else. What should I deprioritize? You're training yourself to stop absorbing every request without question. Slow practice moment. Imagine yourself at your desk or on a Zoom call. Hear someone asking for more. Hey, can you just also? Feel the pressure rise, the little clench in your gut, the quickening of your heartbeat. Now, in your mind, see yourself take one quiet breath before answering. Hear yourself say the line. Notice how it feels in your body to put the decision back where it belongs, instead of quietly punishing yourself for having limits. These workplace boundaries are part of the same bigger pattern, respecting your own time and energy instead of treating them as everyone else's emergency backup. When we get to that Friday night scene, you'll notice how you handle work requests during the week also changes what kind of weekend you end up having. Boundaries get especially complicated in close relationships, partners, family, close friends. Here, the story if I say no, they'll think I don't love them is loud. You might be the one everyone calls when they're in crisis. You might be the strong one, the fixer, the listener. Saying no doesn't just feel selfish, it feels like a betrayal of your role. If you never change this, you end up overfunctioning while other people underfunction. You carry more than your share. You sweep up the mess, carry their emotions, and rearrange your life to keep them from feeling discomfort. Eventually, you burn out and either explode or quietly pull away in ways that confuse them. Healthy boundaries are what let you love people without trying to live their lives for them. Here's a simple, honest line to use in close relationships. I care about you, but I can't do that. It sounds almost too basic, but the structure matters. You're affirming the relationship and clearly stating your limit in the same breath. You're separating love from compliance. Imagine you're in a relationship in Montreal or Minneapolis. Your partner has had a rough week and really wants you to go to a social event with their friends on Saturday night. You've had your own long week, your people out, and you've been looking forward to a quiet night in. They say, come on, it means a lot to me that you show up. Don't you want to support me? You would swallow your exhaustion, slap on a smile, and go, then end up irritable the whole night and snappy on the way home. This time, you check in with yourself. You feel how tired you are. You think about how you show up better when you actually rest. You say, I care about you, and I know this is important to you, but I can't do that tonight. I'm worn out. I'd love to plan something together tomorrow instead if you're up for it. They might sigh or look disappointed. That's okay. You didn't promise never to do things you don't feel like doing, you simply drew a line around tonight. Your tiny action. Think of one way you often override yourself in a close relationship. Maybe you always say yes to last-minute plans, always pick up calls even when you're drained, always say yes to visits when you need alone time. Choose one small, specific area and decide that the next time it comes up, you'll use some version of, I care about you, but I can't do that. Let's pause for a slow practice moment. Picture someone you love, a partner, a parent, a sibling, a close friend. See them asking you for something that crosses one of your emotional or time boundaries. Hear yourself respond, I care about you, but I can't do that, in a warm, steady voice. Notice the tension that shows up in your body at the idea of disappointing them. Now imagine that, over time, that same person starts to understand your limits and trust that when you say yes, you really mean it. Boundaries can feel scary at first, but they often make relationships more real and less fragile. When we get to that Friday night scenario, this mix of caring and clarity will be exactly what helps you say no without making it a big, dramatic statement about the relationship. We've talked about scripts and specific situations, but there's a deeper layer that makes all of this more sustainable: your identity. If you secretly believe you're the responsible one, the fixer, or the one who never drops the ball, any boundary that threatens that image will feel like a threat to who you are. You might decide with your mind that you're going to say no more often, but when the moment comes, your identity kicks in and drags you back into old behavior. If you don't update how you see yourself, every boundary will feel like you're going against your nature. You'll say things like, I'm just a people pleaser, or I'm just someone who can't say no, as if it's written into your DNA. From a Stoic perspective, though, who you are is defined by the choices you make now, not by the stories you've repeated about yourself. So here's a new identity line to try on: I'm someone who respects my limits and others' freedom. That means you see yourself as a person who honors your own capacity and doesn't try to control what other people do with your no. You respect your limits by saying no when you need to. You respect their freedom by allowing them to react however they want without chasing them down to fix their feelings. Imagine you're in a coffee shop in Portland or Philadelphia, working on your laptop. A friend messages, "Hey, can you help me edit my grad school essay tonight? I really need it done before the deadline." Old identity, you would think, I'm the responsible one, I help people with this stuff, that's who I am, and instantly rearrange your evening. New identity, you pause and ask, what would someone who respects their limits and others' freedom do here? You might reply, I'm not able to help tonight, but I can look at it for an hour on Saturday if that still helps. Maybe they accept that. Maybe they're upset. Either way, you've acted in line with who you're becoming. Your tiny action: write down that identity sentence somewhere you'll see it. I'm someone who respects my limits and others' freedom. For the next week, when a request comes in, quietly ask yourself, what does that kind of person do in this situation? Let that question guide your answers. Slow practice moment. Sit back for a second and imagine a version of you who has had healthy boundaries for years. This version of you doesn't panic when a request comes in. They don't over-explain. They're kind, but they're clear. See how they move through their day, checking their phone at reasonable times, saying, I can't do that, when needed, showing up fully when they say yes. That version of you isn't some fantasy. It's built one decision at a time, starting with simple lines and small pauses like the ones we're practicing now. In the Friday night story we're about to walk into, you'll see what it looks like when that future version of you shows up in a very ordinary, very familiar moment, and quietly makes a different choice. It's Friday night. You're in a mid-sized city, maybe Cleveland, maybe Edmonton. It's been a week. Work has been heavier than usual. You've been on back-to-back Zoom calls, answered more emails than you can count, and squeezed in a couple of late-night favors for people earlier in the week out of habit before you started thinking about boundaries more clearly. You're home now. The dishes are done, a show you've been meaning to watch is finally queued up, and for the first time all week, your shoulders start to drop. You're looking forward to doing absolutely nothing. You settle onto the couch, grab a blanket, maybe a bowl of popcorn, and exhale. Then your phone buzzes. It's that friend you actually do care about, the one who loves going out, the one who sees you as their ride or die. The text is long, hey. We're all going out tonight, there's this new bar downtown, everyone's going. I really want you there, it's been forever. You in? You stare at the screen. In your body, two things happen at once, a little spark of that could be fun and a heavier wave of I'm exhausted. Old you would already be typing, yeah, sure, what time, before you even checked in with yourself. You'd drag yourself through a shower, throw on clothes, get in the car or call a rideshare, and show up with a smile that slowly fades as the night drags on past midnight. You'd get home bone-tired, maybe a little annoyed with your friend for pushing you, but more annoyed with yourself for not saying no. Tonight, something different happens. You feel the pressure rise. You hear the familiar story, if I say no, they'll think I'm boring or that I don't care. They made an effort to invite me. What if they stop inviting me? You catch that. You remember what we've been working on. First, you buy yourself time. Instead of firing off an answer, you type, let me think about that and get back to you in a bit. You hit send. Your friend replies with a simple okay. The world doesn't end. You put your phone down. You sit there for a moment, feeling the conflict in your chest. Part of you doesn't want to disappoint them. Another part knows you're running on fumes. You ask yourself quietly, what would someone who respects their limits and others' freedom do? That future version of you imagined? They're right here in this question. You take a slow breath. In, hold, and out. You remember that it's okay to feel guilty and still say no. You picture tomorrow, waking up rested, having a slower morning, maybe catching up on a book or errands without dragging yourself through the day. You picture the alternative, pushing yourself tonight, staying out late, and waking up with that familiar heaviness and regret. You pick up your phone and type, hey, I appreciate the invite, but I'm not able to make it tonight. I'm wiped from the week. I hope it's a great night, send me pics. You're using that structure, clear no, small goodwill. You hit send, and instant guilt flares. A voice in your head whispers, you're a bad friend. They're going to be disappointed. They'll think you don't care. You feel it in your body, a tightness in your throat. You don't argue with the feeling. You quietly say to yourself, it's okay to feel guilty and still say no. I'm allowed to protect my time. You repeat it once more, a bit slower. Your friend replies after a few minutes, okay, I get it. We'll miss you though. The message stings a little, you can hear the disappointment under the words. But you also see something else, your no didn't cause a meltdown. They're allowed to miss you and still go have fun. You're allowed to stay home and recharge. Around 10 p.m., your phone buzzes again. Photos and short videos come in from the bar, laughing faces, loud music, glasses clinking. For a moment, you feel a little FOMO, that fear of missing out. Your brain tries to spin it into a story, see, you should have gone. You're not part of things. You pause, put a hand on your chest, and take another slow breath. You remind yourself, I care about them, and I can't do everything. I can show up another time. You send a quick message back, looks like so much fun, hope you're having a great time. Then you set your phone aside again. You turn back to your quiet night. Maybe you watch your show. Maybe you stretch out on the couch, enjoying the silence. Maybe you go to bed earlier than you have in weeks. As you lie in the dark, you notice your body feels different than it usually does on a Friday. Your mind isn't racing about the next day. You're not bracing for exhaustion. There's a strange, gentle sense of relief. You didn't give a dramatic speech. You didn't announce a huge new boundary to everyone in your life. You just used a couple of sentences, bought yourself time, listened to your own limits, and let someone be mildly disappointed without rushing to fix it. That's how boundaries actually look most of the time, not like big confrontations, but like small, quiet choices that guard your time, your energy, and your peace. You fall asleep that night knowing something important. You can say no without being a bad person. You can let people feel how they feel and still respect your own capacity. And you can repeat that next week, and the week after, until it stops feeling like rebellion and starts feeling like self-respect. What we've really been talking about this whole time is the difference between living your life on everyone else's terms and living it on purpose. When you react, you say yes out of fear, guilt, or habit, then deal with the fallout later. When you respond, you pause, consider your limits and your values, and choose your answer, even when that answer is no. Boundaries are the lines that protect that space. We started by naming the pain, all the times you've said yes while your whole body was quietly screaming no, and how that slowly drains your energy, your time, and your self-respect. Then we began shifting your understanding of boundaries from something mean or selfish to something that simply protects what matters to you. You practiced saying, "I'm not able to do that, but I hope it goes well," and saw how that tiny sentence can give you your evenings back. We dug into guilt, the heavy feeling that hits right after you set a limit. You saw how guilt doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it just means you're breaking an old pattern. You started using the line, "It's okay to feel guilty and still say no," to talk yourself through that wave instead of letting it pull you back into another yes you'll regret. You learned to slow down your responses. Instead of answering every request on the spot, you practiced saying, "Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow." That simple pause turns your decision from a reflex into a choice. It gives you space to look at your calendar, your energy, and your actual priorities. We looked at what happens when people push back, because they will. Not everyone will love your new boundaries. You learn to stay calm when someone is disappointed, using lines like, "I get that you're disappointed, but my answer's the same." You saw how that keeps you steady without attacking their feelings or collapsing your own. You brought boundaries into your digital life by changing how you handle messages and notifications. You muted one draining thread, and you set the expectation that you don't always reply right away. You began moving from living inside your phone to letting your phone live inside your life. We brought these ideas into your work environment. You practiced saying, "I can do that, but I'll need to move something else. What should I deprioritize?" so you're not quietly absorbing endless tasks. You shifted from being the person who always says yes no matter the cost to someone who takes responsibility for their capacity and invites others to share that responsibility too. In close relationships, you learned that love and boundaries can exist in the same sentence. "I care about you, but I can't do that," became a way to honor the relationship without abandoning yourself. You started to see how that makes your eyes more honest and your connections more grounded. Underneath all those scripts, you started to update your identity, from "I'm just someone who can't say no" to "I'm someone who respects my limits and others' freedom." You looked ahead to a version of you who moves through life with calm clarity around your capacity, and you realized that version is built one small decision at a time. And then we walked through that Friday night story, where you came home tired, got the tempting invite, felt the pressure, and did something different. You bought time, checked in with yourself, said a clean no, let your friend feel disappointed, and stayed home to rest. That wasn't just about one night. It was about proving to yourself that you can act differently in the exact moments where you usually cave. So what do you do with all this today? First, pick one microscript that fits your life right now and actually use it. Maybe it's, "I'm not able to do that, but I hope it goes well." Maybe it's, "Let me think about that and get back to you tomorrow." Maybe it's, "I care about you, but I can't do that." Don't try to use all of them at once. Choose one and commit to using it in the next real request you get. Second, set one small, clear boundary around your phone or messages for the next 24 hours. That might be muting one group chat, turning off notifications for an app that constantly pulls you in, or deciding you won't reply to non-urgent messages after a certain time in the evening. Notice the discomfort, but stick with it and watch how your focus and mood shift. Third, write down that identity line somewhere you'll see it. "I'm someone who respects my limits and others' freedom." For the next week, let that sentence be the question you bring into each new ask. What would this kind of person do here? Each time you act from that identity, you're carving a deeper path that makes future boundaries easier. If this resonated, the next natural step is to go deeper into how to handle the anxiety that shows up after you set a boundary, the overthinking, replaying the conversation, wondering if you were too harsh or not clear enough. A future lesson on managing post-boundary anxiety and building emotional resilience will help you stay steady after your no instead of spiraling in your own head. If you want a whole library of Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.